Okay. Welcome to Calleguas board meeting, and we will call the meeting to order. First task is pledge of allegiance. Dr. McMillan? Yes.
Yes. And after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The roll call.
Director Robert,
Here.
Director McMillan. Here. Director Avila,
Here.
Director Waters,
Here.
Director Clady.
Here. We do have a quorum. Okay, we have public.
There is public online.
Okay, so for public comments, this portion of the agenda may be utilized by any member of the public to address the board of directors on any matter within the jurisdiction of the board that does not appear on the agenda and on matters that are on the agenda but are not designated as action items. Depending on the subject matter, the board of directors may be unable to respond at this time or until the specific topic is placed on the agenda at a future Calleguas board meeting. In accordance with the Ralph and Brown Act, please limit remarks to 3 minutes.
If anyone from the public online wishes to make public comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature. I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, then we will go forward. We have a presentation, the Calleguas/Ordinance interconnection video. Megan.
Okay, good evening, directors. Today I'm here to share a video we created with our consultant Ariano and Associates, which highlights the Calleguas-Las Virgenes interconnection and provides upcoming activity information. The video details the 8-weekend partial intersection closure of Lindero Canyon Road and Canaan Road, which started on May 18th. The video was part of a series of efforts to inform the public of these impacts and to provide them information on our project, as well as direct them to the website to get in the real-time information on the project, as well as closures and detour maps and impacts. The video was shared across our social media platforms, as well as posted to the project website. Let's see.
Over the past 2 years, Calleguas Municipal Water District has been diligently working to construct an interconnection pipeline, linking our system to our project partner, Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. Situated along Lindero Canyon Road, just north of the Ventura County and Los Angeles County line, our team of engineers and contractors are moving closer to completing this regionally beneficial project, well before the end of this year. As our project moves into the final stages of construction, residents and motorists should expect weekend lane closures and traffic control through the intersection of Lindero Canyon Road and Canaan Road, and along Lindero Canyon Road, starting in mid-May. Additional weeknight closures along Lindero Canyon Road will occur as pipeline inspection and testing are performed. We understand that road closures and construction activity can be frustrating, but our team greatly appreciates the community's patience as we work to enhance water delivery reliability to communities throughout southeastern Ventura County. Once complete, this project will improve water storage and distribution reliability and flexibility between the two systems, improve the ability to provide potable water to the region during periods of reduced imported water supply, and reduce the risk for potential water shortages associated with natural disasters, such as wildfire and earthquake, and required system maintenance. To learn more about our work and upcoming construction, visit the project website today.
It does flow more smoothly when you watch it normally. I think there's something about routing it through Zoom that's making it a little bit jerky like that. That's not.
Yes. So if you want to view a smoother version, go ahead and visit YouTube or our social media platforms, like, subscribe, that kind of stuff.
Fernando, could you provide a brief update on the milestone that was achieved this weekend?
Absolutely. Happy to report last weekend, we did pressure test the pipeline and it passed. So that was a great accomplishment, big milestone. This weekend, we are going to be disinfecting the pipeline. And then the weekend after that, we'll be doing flushing and installing what we call the golden piece, the last piece that'll connect the new pipeline to the existing Lindero feeder system. It's about a 3-foot long spool that we'll be welding on. And then after that, it will be backfill, another weekend to backfill the excavation in the middle of the intersection that you saw in the video. And then another weekend to pave and stripe. So the goal is to be off-site middle of July.
At which point the city's gonna come in and pave the road, which should make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Noticed how clean Canaan was.
Lindero and Canaan. Yes.
It was, yeah. It's pretty nice.
And I can answer any questions on outreach or communication efforts if you have any.
Questions? Megan? No, you knocked him out. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, do we have any items to be added to the agenda, government code? No, sir. No. Okay, on to the consent calendar. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items on the docket. There is anybody want to ask any questions any of them before we seek a motion for all of them?
Yeah, President Quady, I wanted to ask a question about 5F, the cost of the cubicles. Just for the record, could we talk a little bit about what's included in that quote, and what we're getting?
Okay, then we'll move that to the action items. So Director Avila. Okay, and I guess I wanted, any other questions for any of the other items? Wanted to step through the register a little bit. And I just had some general questions, I believe. The California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Is that something new, an umbrella state agency now that's overseas, like the DTSC?
I believe that was related to hazardous waste.
Yeah.
Typically, we are a low quantity generator, but this past year we did some clean out of some tanks. So we fell into the high quantity generator this particular year and had to.
But I see they do something else further on down the line. So it's like, are they some sort of administrative in order for them to handle fees for the Department of Toxic Substances and Control, and the other one was because I just never heard of it, that's all. Sales and use tax return first quarter, that's on page 20. So it appears like it's a collection department on top of some of the state agencies.
Evening, Director Quady. We pay sales and use tax on items that are purchased out of state and they don't collect the California sales tax. And so we are required to file a California sales and use tax form to pay those taxes. So we track it every time there's an invoice that comes in, there's no sales tax on it, something we purchase. We track it and then send them the sales tax later.
But I'm just trying to figure out the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, it's in charge of.
That one's in charge of the hazardous waste, as Tricia was stating. They collect the fees for them. This is for the California sales tax.
Okay.
Two separate, completely separate.
Yeah, so they appear once on page 4 for paying the hazardous waste generation fee. And then again on page 20 for the tax.
Yeah, for our sales tax.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
Well, okay, I guess it's the baggage that comes with this, but I just remember that the UTSC was paid directly back in the day, I guess.
Yeah, they probably have changed who's collecting it at some point.
Thank you. And okay, that's all I have. And going to the status report. Yeah.
Well, the status report comes later.
Okay. All right.
on the
So then,
reports.
the
You want to move consent items A through E, and then you moved F to
actually action, yeah. So I was,
That sounds like a first.
did I hear a motion?
Second.
Heard a motion, first and second, consent items.
A through E, and then we'll discuss F and the action items for Director Avila.
Director Robert,
Yes.
Director McMillan. Yes. Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Waters,
Aye.
Director Quady. And first was Waters and second was McMillan, correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, consent calendar passes with the exception of item F. So item F and the action items.
Yes, so Fernando Baez, our manager of engineering, will address and explain a little bit more about the background on the project and the costs
Excellent.
associated with it.
Yes. Good evening, Board of Directors and Director Avila, Director Robert. I'm not sure if it's evening or morning over there, but hello. So thank you for the question. Regarding the cubicle reconfiguration, this item includes the demolition of the existing 12 cubicle spaces that we have. It also includes the installation of 18 new cubicles. That includes the dividing walls, writing spaces, filing cabinets, overhead cabinets, and the labor to install that. And of course, the labor is compliant with DIR, Department of Industrial Relations, prevailing wages. So I think the budgeted amount here is $160,000. That includes a 20% contingency on top of what the quote that we received from the vendor. So
And that's just so if there's changes during construction, we don't have to come back to the board if there's, $100 change. That gives us a little bit of buffer. That's pretty typical.
exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about CMAS and how that works?
Yes, so we use the California Multiple Award Schedule to procure this work. That using this path allows us to get prices which have been assessed to be fair, reasonable, and competitive based on vendors complying with this program that is directed by the Department of General Services at the state level. So these bids that we procure from the CMAS program are compliant with prevailing wages and also reasonable and competitive. So it saves the district public agency
And the public contract code.
and thank you.
And the
Contract code, the work to having to bid these services. And it's also worth noting that when we have small tasks, it's a challenge getting bidders because a lot of contractors and vendors do not want to go through the paperwork of meeting these requirements. The CMAS allows us to get vendors that provide these competitive bids.
Is there a lot of electrical involved in moving all these?
There is some electrical work that's going to be done in-house though.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was a little concerned about the cost, but everything said and with 20% contingent, the price is not all too bad, and I am okay with the quote for my part.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have an action item to be voted on or a motion anyway.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any public comment?
Oh, yep. Check for public comment. If there's anyone online who wishes to comment on this item, please use the raise hand feature. I see no raised hands.
Raise hands from the public. Okay, now we will move to
First and a second,
but
but
we had a first and second already, so let's go ahead and vote.
Director Robert,
yes.
Director McMillan. Yes. Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Waters,
Aye.
Director Quady.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. General Manager staff reports, monthly status report.
First
Step
question.
through that. Anybody can chime in on questions, just step through the headers. Water resources implementation strategy. Water policy and strategy. External affairs. Partnerships, I can see some of those. State advocacy. Events categories. Underwater resources.
Yeah, number 15, I just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer and team for going to speak to the students at Royal High School. The students did provide a survey of the presentation and the usefulness, and I was told by the Chamber of Commerce that Jennifer scored one of the highest scores they've ever seen. Students were very happy and they would love to see her back. She got like a 98% positive marks.
It's a tough
Lots of
audience of high
comments.
schoolers.
It was incredible. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Director Avila. It was a lot of fun and I look forward to going back again next fall.
Thank you. Water use efficiency and conservation. Conservation. Water resource development. I just had a question on 23. Sure there's a. I was wondering if the ocean fouling study on a freshwater reservoir is a way to get MWD interested in what might be a water reclamation reuse option. I mean, is that why they're approaching it from a freshwater reservoir?
They're approaching it from a fresh, do you mind if I take this?
Go ahead.
Approaching it from a freshwater perspective because the reservoir is quite deep, so it's able to replicate the depth conditions they're looking for. And because LV owns and operates it, they don't need any additional permits to access it. And if anything, it will actually provide, freshwater is more likely to have fouling issues than seawater. So they feel that if anything, it'll be a more conservative representation of how the technology will perform.
Okay, that's an eye opener. I didn't realize it. I thought the ocean water would be really nasty.
To the question of Metropolitan's currently involved. So they're kind of involved in two ways. So they've been participating in the conversations, and there's a discussion about a letter of intent, but Metropolitan's not doing that. And they probably are not participating in the Bureau of Reclamation grant. But Calleguas and join Las Virgenes in the application for the future supply alternatives grant application to Metropolitan. So they're from a grantor award perspective, they're going to be involved in provided that they approve the application for the FSA, they will be involved from that perspective as well.
Very good. Thank you. Groundwater resources. Engineering. Is that the big wow on 28 on the extended weekend work?
Yep, they're
I
done.
don't want a series.
Yep, it's been a lot of work. Big milestone with the hydrostatic test though.
Design. Studies and planning. Grants and funding opportunities. Miscellaneous engineering. O&M. Question on 59. Trying to say, is there going to be an ongoing corrosion concern at that valve. That we were able to reseal the vault structure.
So with groundwater penetration into vaults, sometimes the seals fail over time. And in this case, we had water dripping in from the irrigation in the local area that made it through the top of the vault that hit the pipe. And so that's what was causing the corrosion. So as part of the project for the LV interconnect, we changed some of the spool pieces, and then staff used sealant to address the sealing, so it shouldn't happen in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just to check on 72, the above ground petroleum storage, it seems to me I remember it's got its own containment.
Yeah, our above ground storage tank, I believe, is a double wall tank. Well, which tank are we talking about? Are we talking about the generator one? Or the filling one?
Above ground tanks.
I think both of, they're all secondary containment and have secondary containment. So I guess that makes it tertiary containment. Is that a thing?
That was treatment. Finance.
Well, back to human resources, I'd like to hear the update on 65 about the employee barbecue.
You beat me to it, Director McMillan. I was going to ask the same question, and also to ask Director McMillan was, will we be having another ad hoc committee to help plan it?
Definitely the HR plan is to include.
We've already secured the location at the other site, right? And it's on the date that we want, so that was a big win, yeah.
We paid up last year.
A different one.
It'll be-
Our first choice was not available, but now it is, or no, not anymore because we got it. So
The park behind the Conejo Creek Park behind the library,
No.
which has more green space and cover and will be more pleasant even if it is hot like it was last year.
Okay, finance. Information technology. Cybersecurity training. Software. What is it when you destroy a server?
Take a hammer to it.
Thanks.
When we're decommissioning and destroying equipment, we have to make sure that there's nothing that is traceable back to give somebody access back to our facilities. So we make sure that the configurations that might have any clues to how our security is done is wiped from them. And then we do hard drive destructions. We pull the hard drives out, and we're going to be utilizing a third-party service to have those destroyed with a certificate of destruction to meet the requirements as part of our risk assessment.
Good to hear. Thank you, of course. Okay. Absent any other questions, that does it for the monthly status report. Go on to the proposed fiscal year budget. Yeah.
All right, good evening, directors. So tonight we're going to discuss the 24-25 proposed budget. We're going to do it in some detail. We're going to get all the departments here. First, I want to thank all of the department managers, the general manager, the deputy general manager. We put a lot of work into this. We were able to cut some costs and do some savings, which made setting the rates much easier for us, especially in light of what Metropolitan did. I also want to thank my staff, Kristen Morgan here, who did some help this year. So she was also part of it, and also Sue Taylor, the accounting supervisor, who may or may not be online listening right now. So anyways, some of these slides we've seen before, because I did a little bit of a discussion before. I'm going to go through the operational side. We're going to go through the water revenues, the sales assumptions, other revenues, how we're doing, what we're looking like. And then we're going to go through each of the department budgets where they're going to give you an update of changes in their budget, things that are coming up. So if you have questions, you can ask them. Briefly touch on the capital improvement plan, then go into the long range finance plan to kind of show you what we're looking at over the next 5 years. and then the next steps. The first, water sales. I'm going to budget 73,000 acre feet again next year. We did budget it this year at 73,000. So really budget wise, we're not looking to increase, but we are on an estimate to hit probably between 65 and 66,000 acre feet this year. So we are definitely going to be short from the 73,000, although it was a rather rainy year this year, which was a little bit unexpected, for that much rain at least. We still may get the 73 next year. That brings our water sales revenues up to the $131.7 million, which is a $9.4 million increase. Most of that's going back to Met with their 9.5% increase, or 11.1% increase. And then with our 5.5, the tier one rate is going to be a 9.5% increase. I'm going to keep pointing this out. There's a $738,000 increase in our revenue side, but that's also reflected on our expense side because it's just a pass through to us, to Metropolitan. But this is the third year in a row with the $700,000 plus increase. So in 3 years, we're paying an additional probably $2.3 million to Metropolitan annually for the RTS. To kind of give you the snapshot of where we were and what we're looking like in the future, you can see back in 2020, 2021, we had 92,900 acre feet in sales. And then we got down to that low of just under $60,000 2 years later with the drought. And then we're trying to get up to back up to 73,000, but we're falling a little short with these extra rainy years this last year. Other revenues, the good news is we're still increasing on the property tax side. It's slowed up some from what it's done in the past. So I'm looking to increase property tax revenues by $550,000. We are recognizing a lot of that this year, which is good because it's making up for some of that shortfall, but I'm not trying to overestimate for next year, kind of keeping it still right about where we think it's going to be this year, maybe a little bit more. I did jump back up the power generation revenue back up to the $600,000, which is around what we have been doing. It's a little bit low than in our really high years, but this is sort of where we average. So it seems like a good place to be as long as we don't have a real rainy year again. Rainy years do cause problems with water flows and being able to generate revenue. I am scaling back on the salinity, interest revenue. I guess I skipped that. We're doing great in interest revenue. It's actually also helping. The higher interest rates are doing really well for us. So we're capturing an extra $1.3 million in interest in the last year and this year too. So we're going to capture it as part of the budget. It helped reduce some of the need for larger increases. On the salinity management pipeline, I'm scaling back some of the expectations from the Camarosa and Camarillo desalters. We are not hitting the budget this year. I still may be a little high next year, but I'm pleasantly hopeful that they do continue to increase. And again, the amount of rain makes a difference for them and how much water they're going to generate through this desalter. So if we have a normal year, they're probably going to be on a more normal basis. All the rest of the revenues are pretty much unchanged. So not much to really say about them. I do a little graph to kind of show you where we've been with some of these. You can see the one I didn't talk about is pumping power revenue. You can see that has been increasing, mostly because the electrical rates are increasing. This is just a pass through to our purveyors. So as those rates go up, it goes onto them and that's increasing our revenue. The power generation, you can see how in the drought year, it really dipped down and we're still trying to catch up into this year. And then the last one's the SMP fees. We budgeted a lot higher in this current year and we're nowhere close to hitting that. So we're definitely going to scale that back next year so that it's better reflective of what might actually come in. Looking at the other revenues, you can see how flat property tax has been in the last couple of years. I mean, when you're talking $11 million, the $550,000 increase is not that big of a jump. But the interest revenue, you can also see that we are definitely increasing and those interest rate increases are definitely helping us, giving us additional revenue to work with. Looking at the expense side, overall, our operating expenses are increasing by $6.7 million. There is actually a $7.8 million increase in just the cost of the water, and that's all from Metropolitan. So they're going to get an extra $7.8 million this year. Administrative expenses, we are actually looking at decreasing it by the 1.1. That's the savings that Calleguas has found to help reduce this. We're looking at some of the supplies, some outside services, consultants, And I put legal because we did increase the legal budget, and I am hoping that does stay with some of the adjudication lawsuits. That's the big kind of one that's up and down a lot, and it's been down this year, which has saved some money. And we hope it just kind of stays at that level for another couple of years until we can get through some of these tougher times. The other thing is salary and benefits. We are looking at some increases on that side, $1.4 million. We have adding some positions, but we've also had a COLA. We've done the salary survey, which we're still implementing. There's an increase that we've approved for July 1st that's built into this. The benefit costs are also increasing, especially medical and some of the pension stuff. PERS has not had a lot of really great years in the last couple, so I'm expecting those to continue to increase for the next few years. And this also reflects some reorganization that we've done. In the last year, we've brought a lot of position changes to you. We now are going to be creating a new external affairs department. And then with that, we've also had a couple of positions that we hadn't filled this year. And as we try to shook out what we were going to do with external affairs and water resources, we've actually captured 2 of those positions and we've moved into other areas of the district that we felt there was a bigger need at this time. Not to say we won't go back and take a look at those departments to make sure they are staffed where they need to be, but right now we've decided that we're looking for an electrical inspector. We have 4 inspectors that are into their 50s. Retirement could be around the corner. We want to make sure we're ready for any succession planning there that is coming up. So we're going to make sure we get a new inspector in there. And we're also adding a new position in O&M system maintenance where it can help all of the district with that position. System maintenance helps supply people when we do tours, can help water resources, can help here up in the staff up here in the admin building. So it's kind of a position that's going to be helping everybody in the district as well as increasing the maintenance of the district infrastructure. So those were the 2 areas that we thought we needed some additional personnel. So we moved those 2 positions to there. We didn't add any new positions with this budget at this time. We just reallocated 2 that were not being utilized. To kind of give you a look at where we are with debt service versus the operating versus the cost of water. I like showing this because it shows how much the cost of water is actually our budget. It's this year, 72% of our budget is pretty much going to Metropolitan. That's all about the water, cost of the water. You can see that the red area, which is the operating expenses, did decrease a little bit. Last year it was about 19%. This year it's 17.8. That reflects the fact that we did some cost cutting as well as the fact that the cost of water has increased. And then debt service is staying pretty much the same at the 10% from year to year. You can see the graph that shows you the salaries, how much they've been increasing in the last few years as we've added positions and some of the costs of the positions have gone up. The benefits they're relatively flat. We have up and downs, and those up and downs are almost always related to CalPERS. At the end of the year, we do our actuarial study and they come through and say how much we've got to expense for our benefit for the pension. And that 1 year that's in the middle there, that looks like it's 0. It was actually negative because that was the year they had a really good year. They made like 25% on their portfolio and it said, oh, we get all these savings. So you get to reduce your benefits this year. And it took us down to pretty much 0. But the next year, the opposite occurred and it's been kind of occurring for the next 2. So I'm expecting this year to have some more expense as well as the next one. Not quite as big as the one that was last year, but it's still going to be happening. With that, I'm going to start turning it over to the individual departments. They're going to come and talk to you about their individual budgets. In the budget document, you saw there was like 2 sections of it. The first part's really the budget itself. And then after the budget came all those individual sheets that had all the detail by department. Each department manager is going to come up and kind of talk about that detail area, kind of talk about the things that have changed and things they want to highlight to you. So if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt them and ask them questions as we go along. First up, we're going to start with the general manager.
Okay. Are you putting
I am not going to put them up.
Okay.
I was just going to leave this up so that we can kind of just talk about it. I mean, that's just way too much words on slides. Trying to read that. It's better to try to read it off your computer if you want to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So where the general manager admin budget starts is, if you want to follow along, is page 153 of the packet. there really isn't, the big news is frankly reducing some of the costs, both the consulting costs and the legal costs, from last year to this year. That's reflecting kind of our evolving role in the RIST and where we think those costs will be for a combination of the next phase and any follow-on studies, as well as our hope that we will be spending less money on legal services, particularly with respect to the adjudications. Another thing you'll note here that is noteworthy is that there is a budget for elections. That is because this is an election year and we have 3 open seats. The board, or 3 seats that have the opportunity to be contested. The board previously approved consolidating our elections with the county, which of course is by far the most cost-effective way to handle that. That estimate is based on what we have roughly paid in the past, but it will vary depending on which of the 3 are contested. So that's the main thing on that one. The next one is, this is page 155, is the board. There isn't a huge change in this year over year. It includes the travel and training budgets for each of you, as well as the board meeting expense, basically to keep people in snacks, which is once again about the same. So that's it on the general manager side. My budget's pretty straightforward. I get the easy part of this. So if there's questions on that, I'll turn it over to Charlotte to talk about external affairs.
Good evening, President Quady, Vice President Waters, directors, staff, and guests. I'm happy to talk to you about the newest department here, External Affairs, which was officially born this year. As a reminder, our goal is twofold. One is legislative and policy advocacy. The second is a public information officer role. So really our budget mostly reflects the legislative portion of that because we go to where the legislators are in Sacramento and DC. The PIO role is largely responsive and or locally based. We don't require travel in that regard, so it's not reflected in the budget numbers, but it is a big part of our department. So the trips to Sacramento, excuse me, reflect, I think, a very successful first 10 months of advocacy, establishing relationships with legislative staff in the Capitol. They have a very different role from district office staff, so focusing on both types of relationships is really important. And that said, this budget also doesn't reflect the local and regional elected official outreach that we've done, including the 8 Calleguas tours and briefings we've done, with many of them with your participation. And they're really among the most effective engagement tools that we have. They're building blocks for relationships, and they require an in-house multi-departmental effort, as I mentioned before. And I'd love to continue your engagement with external affairs, and the Aqua DC trip next year should be another opportunity to do that. And as far as the mechanics of our department, we are a 2-person team under the guidance of the deputy general manager. We like to think we punch above our weight class with some of the accomplishments we've been able to achieve in terms of establishing those relationships. In particular, we've cultivated a very positive working relationship with Assemblymember Bennett, who is a leading voice on water policy development in California, and also the chair of an important Assembly budget subcommittee, overseeing agencies that impact many of the things that we do here. He was our keynote speaker at the grant celebration last month. And in addition, he sent a letter to Metropolitan, encouraging Metropolitan to consider our feedback and those of our purveyors in the rates discussion. Few more things. I'm serving on the CSDA Legislative Committee, which is an important way for us to remain informed of legislation. We're engaging with Met staff. We're helping the district earn positive media coverage. And our plan moving forward is really to just keep expanding our influence, making sure that people know who we are and what we're doing, and that we in external affairs know what everybody is doing here. We anticipate seeing the department evolve and grow hopefully over the next few years as we develop more consistent patterns and continue to implement the strategic plan. So thank you for your attention. That's my update on external affairs.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Any questions? Huh? Okay, on we go.
Human resources and risk management.
Good evening. So Dan touched on a lot of HR highlights, I'd say, for last year. So we've had new employees, a new org chart, and I have a new budget that fits on less than 3 pages. So I'm feeling good about that, unlike the O&M budget. So to kick it off, you'll see We're focused on employee engagement, employee appreciation, and employee development. So our travel and training budget reflects that. It's gone up a little bit, kind of consolidated some of the leadership training for the management team into our budget this year. So that's adjusted a little bit. Another area you might see an adjustment is the consultant budget. We have a risk and resiliency assessment and emergency response plan recertification due for the EPA this year. So we plan on using a consultant to revise that. It's an every 5-year event. So that will be taken care of in 2025. The next one that might jump out at you is the insurance. I know it jumped out at me. This is Dan moving some of his budget over here to help him look a little lighter, but this is where insurance belongs. So we have increased that from last year about 5% just to go up with the rising rates. So in line with that. And I think lastly, permits have gone up. We've just kind of adjusted those a little bit to keep up with the rising rates we're seeing from the Department of Water Resources, Safety Advance, and our local certified unified program agencies that are monitoring hazardous waste programs. So overall, our budget with safety, supplies and materials and memberships has remained the same. But if you guys see anything that jumps out at you, ask questions.
Well, you answered my question. Any questions? Thank you, Tricia.
Back to Dan and finance.
We're back. As you notice, my budget's getting lighter and lighter as I go along, but I mean, that's an okay thing. I mean, we figured that the insurance was part of the risk management side, so we decided to move it on over there and let them take a crack at it for a while. But overall, I mean, finance is going to be focusing on audit, budget, and maintaining our cash and our bonds, and so we're basically building a budget around that. The main thing that changed, other than the insurance going away, is you'll see that my travel and training has increased. We're going to go to a few more conferences. I'm taking more staff as we're starting to build for our succession planning, trying to get staff more involved in all aspects of the whole finance department, which means we're going to try to go to CMTA this year, which is it's a treasury management agency. We've been a member for a while. We had them certify our investment policy at one point, so we're going to go listen to them. I'm going to take Kristen Morgan with me, who is really doing a lot of our cash stuff too, so that she can see what's also out there, and as well as bringing them to the CSMFO, which we go to every year. So that's mainly our focus, is succession planning and making sure that I'm ready for when other people start to retire, including myself. So that's it. I'm not ready yet.
Dan.
Thanks, Dan. On to IT.
Wes.
Afternoon, good evening, board. Thank you for having us come up here and give you guys a presentation. First year of me being able to kind of put together my own budget without it being a conglomeration of everything that created our department, right? Because last time we had this same conversation was just after I had got promoted and the IT department became an actual department. So kind of tailing off of Charlotte. Our deal for IT is that we're here to support the district technology needs of today and the visions of tomorrow. So going through budget, you're going to see a few changes in here. A lot of more clarification as to some of the services that we are using, where before we had it kind of like grouped areas, but training is going to remain the same. We've been able to do a lot of great training this year for both the IT specialist and myself, and we plan to continue that and continue developing the talent that we have in our department. The Zoom meetings, the membership dues went up slightly because the Zoom account got transferred to my account. So it used to be a part of the general manager's account. Now that got moved over to mine. So that was why that increase is there. And so that we can keep our public informed with our Zoom meetings that we have for our board meetings. In an effort to improve the resilience for the company, we are doing life cycle changeouts. So there's a drop in our small equipment and furniture section, but the drop was due to completing some of the larger projects that we had associated to us. But that doesn't mean that we're not continuing our life cycle program. So one of the life cycle programs that we developed was a 5-year program for all of our equipment, our workstations, our laptops, including our turnouts, the computers that are turnouts that are also out there. So We will be aggressively making sure that we are staying on top of those because that's about the expected life cycle that we're looking at for all of those devices. So by doing that, it helps improve our resilience on that. A slight increase in our consultants this year for the GIS updates. We needed to be able to get the some informational base map parcel layers into our GIS system. So that was a small increase there. Our licensing and maintenance cost increased overall. But the main part of the licensing and maintenance cost, it was the biggest cost increase was the Microsoft Office licensing. So if you guys recall from one of the last board meetings, I talked about to get some of more features to enhance our cybersecurity program. We needed to change off of Office 365 licensing and go to Microsoft 365 licensing. And doing that was a cost increase, but by doing that, it gives us the tools to enhance our cybersecurity for that. Moving over to outside services. Outside services reduced largely in the part that we started and completed quite a bit of tasks this last year. And we don't really have anything large to take care of this year. So one of the notes I wanted to make, two notes I wanted to make here for you guys was one that for our network consultant, as was reported in the monthly status report this month, we are out for an RFP for those services. So those services are being gone through right now, and we've got at least 3 solid vendors that have come back to us as part of an interview process today. And then enhancing on our cybersecurity as part of our ongoing plans. We are rotating yearly, whether we do a penetration test or a risk assessment. So you will notice that this year is our penetration test, and we're going to incorporate an incident response plan in that. So again, enhancing our cybersecurity for the district. The last thing that goes into the equipment costs over $5,000, and that is one of the big things that will hopefully make things nicer in here is we plan to overhaul this room with audio video for the boardroom. So that will give us the opportunity to potentially have more cameras, to be more of an integrated platform for management. So we're not having to run 3 different laptops to be able to make the board meeting run like we currently have been doing, and give us the ability to have speakers like myself on camera for our audience as well. So that's some of the upgrades that we plan on doing, as well as some like push to talk microphones and stuff like that. So that's one of the items in there. And then the other items are some of our copiers. So, and again, that's life cycle replacement. They're just in this section because of the cost of those copiers devices. So that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Thanks, Wes. Any questions? No? Okay.
Don't speak up if they have anything. I'm confident.
On to engineering.
Excellent. Good evening, board. So for engineering, the big difference is, as Dan was alluding to, we are adding another position, specifically an inspector, an electrical inspector. We have 4 inspectors that are Calleguas staff and 1 electrical inspector that is a consultant. The electrical inspector that's a consultant, he is just turned a young 70 years old. So we, in order to prepare the workforce of the future and for succession planning, tying that back to our strategic plan, we are planning to add this position that will allow us to continue providing that level of inspection we're used to, specifically electrical inspection. So that is the big jump and difference you'll notice here between this fiscal year and the previous fiscal year. We're also providing the inspectors and project managers additional technologies so they can complete their work more efficient and proficiently. That's adding iPads so the inspectors and the project managers can be connected to the project files, submittals in real time, and have the ability to take photos and reports and immediately submit them to the inspector in the office, to the contractor, and resolve any field issues a lot more efficiently. Again, this is tying back to the strategic plan of preparing the workforce of the future, because a lot of contractors and other agencies are already implementing these technologies. Also associated with that is a software license and maintenance. We increased our budget there so we can also provide for project management software that will allow us again to do that interaction between the field and the office and the contractor. So with that, those are the big changes. I am happy to take any questions.
What's the program you use now?
We do not have a program right now. Well, not a software. So we do have internal checks and checklists and procedures. We just don't have the electronic version of that yet.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Water resources, Jennifer.
So some of the changes in our budget kind of you've already heard about, like you can see that we have a decrease in our personnel expenses, and that's just because we had budget allocated previously for a position in our department that we didn't end up filling and we don't need to fill at the moment. So we've reallocated and moved that budget into additional areas, as you've heard, that where we can use it. So that went down. We had a small increase in our budget for memberships, dues, subscriptions, as well as small furniture and equipment. This is because we would like to get some software subscriptions and equipment for our senior communications specialist, who you heard from earlier tonight, to be able to do some of the graphics and collateral development in-house that we currently use consultants to do. So she's very creative, she's very capable, she just needs some additional tools. So that's a small increase in that budget. Our consulting budget has decreased because a lot of last year's consulting budget was set aside for public outreach related to the RIST process. And so those tasks have moved into the general manager's consulting budget to consolidate all of the RIST activities under one kind of area. So that is a decrease there. We have also done an increase in the public education and promotion. This is really to reflect what we've actually been spending in prior years under public education and promotion. Historically, we've tended to do more in that area and then just transferred over unused money from our conservation line item to cover it. So we just wanted to adjust this and make it more realistic in terms of what we actually spend and what we expect to continue to spend. Under water use, efficiency, and conservation, there's two large changes there. The first is you'll see a significant decrease in the budget due to that turf rebate supplement finally coming to an end. So even though we allocated that money several years ago, some of those applications take quite a long time and they've requested extensions from Metropolitan. And so that money had still been set aside for them. So that was kind of a PO carryover that we had in previous fiscal years. That's done. And so you'll see that has been removed from that budget. And then we've added a new item for MAP water efficiency funding. So that's Metropolitan's member agency administered program, where they allocate money for water use efficiency projects for member agencies. And so our intention is to provide a cost share program for our retailers for professional services for their compliance with the upcoming Conservation is a California Way of Life regulations. And so we've taken that as a budget line item for program costs. However, you'll also see that same amount reflected under our non-operating revenues, because we're going to get all that back from MET through the member agency administered program. And then lastly, outside services. That includes continuing with our website redesign and transition to new hosting services. It also includes some budget for the Lake Bar dedication site and assembly area renovation. So we have plans to make that area much nicer, where we can use it as a stop when we have tours and when we host various visitors to the district. We're going to make it a nicer kind of assembly area up there with some space for parking and the ability for a bus to come through, and where we can set up chairs and things like that. So there is some budget included in that. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
That includes a fishing pier and
Many people wish, but unfortunately, no. Fish viewing here.
Available to you on the alleyway, on the catwalk out to the outlet tower.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And last but by no means least, Rob.
I do have more than 3 pages.
He does.
Good evening, directors. Starting with the admin detail sheet, I'm just going to run through some of the highlights. We won't go line by line. I know that we've done that in the past, so I've learned my lesson. In consultants, the eddy current inspections, we target those every year. This year we have the 78 Calleguas conduit branch 1 through 3. You'll see similar numbers from last year. We budgeted the same inspections last year, but prioritized the tunnel LiDAR scanning, so that's why they were pushed. Metropolitan has a 21-day shutdown on their calendar for January 2025, and I anticipate our inspection of units 2 and 3 to coincide with that work. It'll take us about 2.5 weeks to cover that much of the pipeline, and we'll do that in conjunction with their work. Supplies and materials, similar to last year's numbers, as well as the outside service support, software and licensing, minor increases, primarily in our e-procurement and our PLC support. Outside services, close to last year's budget. We are continuing to work on camera installations at various sites throughout the service area with the hope of reducing our overall security patrol budget in the near future. You'll see cars, trucks, and boats. We continue to participate in the state bid process. And so we're continuing to place our orders with the other eligible agencies. Deliveries are what's the challenge. So they're all over the map. So that's why you see some numbers carrying over from year to year. We continue to use our replacement projections, purchase the vehicles, and then adjust accordingly. So we will be targeting some small SUVs and light work trucks this year. In the equipment other category, a couple of key items for us will be the backup battery system at GPS-1, as well as some new calibration equipment for our chlorine air calibrators, which are through BMAX. Moving on to system maintenance, numbers are similar to last year. We're continuing to focus on slowly increasing our stock of valves and emergency repair items. Distribution, supplies and materials, we are seeing price increases across the board, and we'll adjust our stock levels to perform maintenance while maintaining a supply of necessary items to make repairs. The overall numbers are close to last year's budget. Outside services, it's the largest item, is the annual standby power maintenance on the generators. We have 21 units throughout the system. Our contracts are built around the manufacturer's recommendations and levels of service. They're typically 3 levels, with level 1 being just primary oil changes, air filters, inspections, and then load bank testing. The second and third levels build on the first. And so second levels could include things like coolant replacement, belts, and more rubber type items. And with the third level, actually physical equipment like sensors, thermostats, things like that. We are scheduled to perform level 2 services for this upcoming budget. So let's see. And so that work ensures the facilities remain ready to respond in the event of any SCE outages. Moving on to control systems, supplies and materials, you see 2 significant items in this upcoming budget that are critical to our operation. The first is replacing the CL17 analyzers, which have reached their end of life and are scheduled to be removed from manufacturer support by the end of this year. We have been testing new units with anticipation of replacing these, and we have found units that will operate similar to the fashion that we currently have, so the transition should be seamless. And those units are throughout our service area at key water quality monitoring sites like reservoirs or well field, the headworks of our system on Smith Road, as well as the main facility here. The other purchase that we're planning for is replacing the confined space air monitors to a new Ventus MX4 system. This will include 36 handheld units and the equipment from Industrial Scientific. The program continues to be refined to provide our staff with the best equipment to evaluate atmospheric conditions prior to entering confined space sites. And this is one of the programs that we won the LeBounty Safety Award years ago. We are seeing some increases of the analyzer chemicals. We're planning for that as well. Regulatory group, no real changes other than the State Water Resource Control Board, DW, Department of Drinking Water fees that will go up for operational permits. Typically happens every year, and it's based on the size of our system and the number of people served. Moving on to the Lake Bard Water Filtration Plant, we are getting notices for chemical cost increases, but we're confident that we can keep the same budget as last year. The SMP, similar cost as well, small increase to the permitting from the same agencies. So, and that MPDES outfall permit with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System that is also run by the State Water Resources Control Board. So lastly, will be the well field. Supplies and materials a little lower this year. We've completed some projects out there that we were working on. But we will still be purchasing things like sand separators and other equipment. Sand separators help the system by grabbing the sand before it reaches the distribution system. And they typically, the interior coatings are the weak points. And as the material thins, they're identified and they need to be replaced. And we have been trying to have one on hand at all times to make that seamless transition. And I think to date, we've replaced 3 of the 18 units. And then I think just as a side note, I thought you might ask about the CHP support. So I'll get in front of that, but that's a program where we actually hire California Highway Patrol to watch our traffic set up on Grimes. It's something I started years ago when we were having the heavy trucks and semi trucks drive through our traffic control and around us in a very unsafe manner. So now several times a year, we can bring in officers. They will sit on the side of the road there and it works a lot better for us. So they might not respect us, but they definitely respect the officers. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rob? Overseas there, any questions?
No questions for me. Great work, Rob and team.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, well, Rob, show my next slide. So that was the whole budget from all the departments. I mean, as you can see, everybody put a lot of time and effort into developing these budgets to make sure that we are offering a very streamlined, efficient operation here. To kind of show you where we are debt service coverage wise, which is always something that's important when we're going for bonds and what the rating agencies are looking at. We have budgeted this year at a 1.75, and the current proposed budget is going to be at a 2.12. This is the first time that we've actually budgeted over 2 since I've been here. So we finally got someplace that I've been trying to reach for a long time. This does include the fact that we have gone out and got some more debt, and I am estimating in here that we will be drawing down on it. That 603, the crew room building is going to get built, get started next year. So we will start drawing down some more, and we can always draw down on another project if we get that started as well. But the debt service coverage for this proposed budget is looking very good. To kind of go over a quick shot of the capital improvement program, we currently have $102 million in budgeted projects, of which we've already spent $58.7 million. In this budget, we are asking for an additional $1.8 million like we always do. It's all for unplanned system repairs. 1.5 million is for the system, and then $300,000 is for unplanned pump repairs in case we have a pump that goes down. That could be the hydros, it could be out in the well field. This last year, we've had a lot of the well field ones that we had to do because of all the pumping we did out there. But we always have some money in there just in case some of those break down. But overall, we have a remaining budget that's unspent at $45.2 million that we're still continuing to work on going through this next year. Onto the long-range finance plan. So we've seen the current budget, and this is kind of the big picture, what we're looking like for the next 5 years based on some of these numbers. Some of the assumptions that went into this, of course, we took Metropolitan's rates. We know the 2025 rate of the 11.1%. We know the 2026 rate, which is going to be 9.5%. And then they are estimating 2 more years at 11.5%. That was their last one they came before they get to that 5% and beyond, 5% for all the years beyond that. Calleguas rates, we're at 5.5 this year. And over the next 3 years, we're not getting above the 6%. It's in between the 5.7 and the 6% range for the next 4 years. So we're pretty steady based on what I'm making as my assumptions. I'm assuming that we're still going to be doing the COLAs at 4% for this year and next year. And then it goes down to 3.5%. I am hoping that that holds out for this year. Right now, it's currently running right at that 4% mark. So it's kind of tight. There's not much wiggle room in that, but I'm hoping that it holds the same. I'm continuing to assume increased costs in pension and medical costs as we go forward. Like I said, I've had, NOPERS has had a few bad years in the last couple of years, not bad, but they have not made their assumptions, which means that it's going to cost more for us. Every time that doesn't happen, the percentage we have to pay goes up. And so I'm kind of making an assumption that that's going to continue for the next 2 years at least, and then probably flatten out a little bit for us. I do add in here some increased staffing. So I don't assume that we're never going to hire anybody in any positions. I mean, as the district is growing, the SMP's getting more dischargers on, it's going to increase our operating costs. We're going to need some more staff. So I have added some more staff into this projection in the future. We added the one this year, or none this year. I think we're adding 2 next year and then maybe 2 years after that. So there is a little bit of staffing involved in here. Nothing that we're holding it at this point, but it's something that we do consider when we're putting together our long-range finance plan. And then most of the operating costs, we're doing about 3%, which I'm hoping that's where some of my wiggle room is, because we don't typically have all of our costs go up at 3%, but it does help us going out in the future. So there is some escalation of operating costs out there as well, because utilities seem to continue to be going up, and they are going up by more than 3% at this point. We've seen this slide before. This is the same slide as before when I'm doing the water rates. You may see it again next week as we talk water rates. So this is the tier 1 rates. You can see that, there's the 9.5% this year. Next year, we're looking at probably close to 8.6. And then we're looking at some 10% increases for 2 years, and then a 5.2 the final 5th year. So we are looking at some significant increases, but it really all has to do with Metropolitan does. That Metropolitan rate increases has a direct effect on what our rate increases are. And those large increases definitely do affect what we do. This is a snapshot of what our funds look like. So the green is kind of the operating fund. I'm going to point out that it shows 2024, and we did budget for a negative almost $6 million coming out of reserves for this year. The good news is that we're doing better than that. We're still going to be probably using some of our reserves this year. Probably we're closer to the 2 million mark at this point. I'll show that on the next presentation. We can kind of go over that when I do the financial statements, but the next year in 2025, you can see that we're in the positive, which is a good thing. So we're actually adding money back to reserves, and for the next 5 years, it's continuing to increase. So we're looking at ways to increase our reserves to get them back for all that money we spent over the last 2 years with the drought. So we're working our way back on the operating side. Construction fund, we do have some big assumptions as that we're going to be doing a lot of big projects in there. So we're spending a lot of money, but you can see that there's still cash there to be able to support that. Of course, it doesn't necessarily put a lot of cash in there because I haven't built in all the cash into the long range forecast when we start pulling it out. I've pulled only up to the $20 million. I think I have us pulling 12 million out this year and the rest of it coming out in 2026. And then the yellow line's the SMP, or the yellow line's actually our total cash. So you can see total cash never gets below the $100 million mark. The one above it is the SMP, and I'm going to point out that it is negative. We have operating wise, we for many years operated in the red where we were spending more than we were bringing in. Fortunately, even this year, we should still be in the green. So we are putting money in there. That deficit's going down. So we are actually adding to those reserves as well. And it doesn't, if we get another operator in 2028, which is kind of the assumption in here, which we probably need to look at, but we'll break even and we'll start having money that's set aside for future infrastructure replacement if something breaks. So that's all I have. The next steps is at the next meeting, you're gonna not necessarily hear from me again, but you're gonna see the budget on the board packet because we're gonna look to adopt it. This is our opportunity. If we had any changes from the board that you could let us know, we can put them into the budget and we can make it before the board adopts the final version at the next meeting. And with this budget is gonna come the water rates because the water rates are developed off of this budget and what we're bringing to the board at this time. And that's all I have. Are there any other questions? Any discussion?
Any questions overseas?
No questions for me. It's very reasonable.
Agreed. Thank you for your work. That's it's nice to see that we're tracking below the metropolitan average rates.
One of the things that I think of is that, we obviously how much that influences what the budget actually looks like, and the inverse is kind of funny too, is the fact that no matter what happens, what changes most is the metropolitan water expense. And you guys are keeping a pretty good lid on all the costs, and proportionately, it's such a small thing compared to the amount of money that, exchanges with Metropolitan Water District. So
We try hard to keep our budget in check and keep it within our revenue.
well, I wholly appreciate all of your guys' work on the budget. I'm sure it's one of your most fun things to do.
As a finance person, I do enjoy the budget.
Well, and frankly, that's good for me to hear. So, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, go on to the financial report. Standards. Thank you all.
All right, so tonight we have the financial report through April. So this one has a lot of kind of bad news, good news kind of thing. So you're going to see that. Of course, the bad news, we're under our water sales. We've budgeted 59,000 through the month of April, and we're a little over 52,600. So we are definitely falling short on the water sales. That continues through the month of May, just to get you a heads up. Overall, we're still hanging in there, and you're going to see that as we come through that we've had enough savings through this budget at this point in the year that we are maintaining that to cover the loss of the water revenue. So looking at the water revenues, net of the water costs, we brought in 20.9.7 million, and that was the budget, and we're at 26.8. So you can see that we're close to $3 million short, just on where we should be. So that's a shortage. We're already starting with this up to $3 million. That's the bad news. So the good news is that when we look at our administrative expenses, we had budgeted to spend 24 million at this point of the year, and we're only at 19.9. So there's almost $4 million in savings right there that we have not spent. That has to do with a lot of the consultants, the legal, some salaries that we've been doing some of the salary savings with. So that has helped us, and that's the good news, is that we are actually covering all of this shortage in the water sales with other savings. You can see that if you look at the taxes and interest for this month, we should be at $14 million, and we're only at 11.6. That doesn't look good. That's bad news. The good news is that typically we get our second tax payment in the month of April. The county this year has changed their accounting software, and they were unable to get us our payments until the middle of May. So we have $5 million that should have been in April, that is now going to be in May. So really, I mean, when you're looking at the April's kind of distorted because typically we would have had an extra $4 to $5 million coming in during this month. But you would look at the overall operating income, we budgeted 19.9, we're at 19.7, doesn't look that bad. And the principal and interest were right where we expect to be, even with the extra interest that is coming in with the additional loan we've brought in. So that brings us to kind of look at the finance just for the month of April. You can see that overall we were short on the operating side by $1 million. We short on the water revenues because we didn't hit our water budget sales. But we had some savings with the cost of water because we didn't have to pay that much water because we were short on our water sales. But we spent just about where we thought we'd be as far as the admin expenses for the month of April. So that broke out just about even, not much savings there. So we were short about $1 million. But then you see that total non-operating where we're short by almost $5 million, and that's the lack of the property taxes. That's what caused that shortage. So, it's kind of the bad news is that it looks bad, but the good news is it's going to look really good next month. And then when you look at the capital related expenses, that's just a very nice positive because that's actually reflecting $3 million that we got in from the state for that grant. We weren't really expecting the money because it hadn't come in. I think we had budgeted in prior years and refused to put it in because we weren't sure when we were going to get it, but we got it this year. So got it in the month of April. And so that helps us. So we're looking good. But overall, we were short for the month by $2.7 million, and that was because of the property tax. But then you take a look at the cash for the month of March to April, and you can see that there's a good sign because cash increased, and that had to do with the grant coming in. That extra $3 million actually increased our cash and in the bank. So that was a good note for us. So overall, what I would say is that we're looking good as far as the financial statements go. This month was kind of an odd month because of the county and throwing off when the payments came in. It makes our budget get adjusted and look weird, but we know it came in. We saw the money come into the bank, so it's on the 15th and things will be looking good in May. To kind of go over the ratios, and these are not going to look as good as they have in the past, but again, it's not going to be anything to be worried about. You'll see that the current ratio and the quick ratio both decreased. Part of that is really just because of the month timing. This time of month, the liabilities are increasing because our Met bills are increasing. And that liability is the bottom number on the equation or the ratio. And that just makes that number start going down a little bit. The thing I'm going to point out about those two ratios is that anything over 1 is good. So if you read the little thing, it says that, and we're at, still 9.5 and 7. So we are way above where it was considered an adequate ratio for these things. So we are still in very good shape. The debt ratio never changes until we hit our next payment, which is going to be July 1st. Debt service coverage is kind of the same thing. It's down to 1.59. We didn't get the revenue, so we weren't able to increase our operating income. And if you were to look to actually 2 slides back, overall, the operating income was about -70 over budget. So we kind of broke even for the month on the operating income, but our debt service went up. So that causes that debt service coverage to go down. But again, that will increase again next year next month once we get our property tax back in. And that same goes with the times interest earned. The operating income did not increase that much, but the expenses for the principal and interest did, causing those to dip a little bit. But they're still in very good shape. Still expecting to be higher than what we expect, especially for the debt service coverage. I'm expecting it to be higher than the 1.7 by the time we end the year. And that's all I have for this presentation. Unless there's some questions.
Any questions? Okay. Let's continue on to the consultants report.
All right, so my last item tonight is the quarterly consultants report. This is our snapshot that we bring to the board once every 3 months to give you an idea of where we are with all our consultants, gives you an idea of all the contracts that are out there and how much we spent on them. And with that, that's all I really have to say. So if there's any questions from the board, all the departments are here to answer questions on their contracts.
Any other questions on the consultant report? Hey, Dan. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, on to the Metropolitan Water District, Southern California results of focus groups.
Yeah, if I could just provide a little bit of context for this. We added this to the agenda. Director Quady was at the purveyor meeting a couple weeks ago. Charlotte had given a version of this presentation that was originated from a metropolitan committee. It certainly generated some really interesting discussions amongst the purveyors about, public perception and issues. Director Quaid had asked that we include the copy of the presentation in the packet. I suggested instead that we have Charlotte kind of revisit that presentation. I know obviously Director McMillan was at the original presentation of this from Matt, but I thought it was of enough interest and relevance that a brief overview would be appropriate here tonight. So Charlotte thankfully agreed to do that.
Very good. Thank you, Christine, and appreciate that introduction. And just my caveat to presenting is that I am sort of a third-party presenter here. So if there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to follow up with Metropolitan for you, but I'm happy to give you an overview of this very interesting study. So let's see here. Back in December, Metropolitan conducted research via EMC Research. They hired this consultant to focus on a few areas of people's attitudes toward water agencies, water supply, water quality, and public trust issues in general. This is a qualitative study. It was designed to gather feedback from Southern California residents on these things I just mentioned, and really also designed to generate discussion about specific water-related issues, as I said, water supply and water quality. So the methodology involved a total of 8 focus groups of 8 people each, so 64 people. 4 groups were labeled engaged community members and 4 groups were bottled water consumers. The research was conducted online by a trained facilitator and professional moderator. There were a mix of key audience segments of all different types of folks joining in. And this green box at the bottom is really important because it explains that qualitative research is really not meant to extrapolate beyond that certain focus group and not meant to project to a larger audience, but it's really intended to kind of get attitudes from a robust discussion of a select number of people. So the key findings, first one, not surprising, unfortunately, probably. Most participants were strongly distrustful of politicians, government, and corporations. Skepticism has developed over the years on a perception of a failure to deliver on promises. Most local agencies did not face the same level of skepticism, but participants were not inclined to lend their trust to agencies they didn't know much about. And on that note, the awareness of Metropolitan was quite low, though many were aware of water supply infrastructure projects and programs. Few knew who was doing what in that regard. And with the awareness of Metropolitan, that kind of insulated the agency somewhat against the distrust placed in other government agencies. So in this case, low name ID was helpful to Metropolitan. Trust in water quality, participants did have a relatively high awareness of things like drought and conservation, which is good. A very interesting finding for me, at least, was number 2, that the preference for bottled water now is a lifestyle choice rather than an active decision based on dissatisfaction with their own tap water. And when I listened to this presentation, the consultant noted that 20 years ago, it was definitely the notion of not trusting in tap water, which is why most people drank bottled water. But now with bottled water being pervasive, people are more inclined to just choose that. And cost is not a deterrent.
Can I jump in with the goop?
Please jump in with the goop.
So talking about trust, water quality, and who people trust. So Gwyneth Paltrow has, arguably one of the a much larger following on social media than Calleguas does. And she was recently talking about her morning routine, and she has alkaline water that she squeezes lemon into, which for those of us that know anything about pH, totally disqualifies it, neutralizes the alkaline water, right? So this is, when we talk about trust and water quality, no one's even thinking about what they're really doing, right? But the idea of like, oh, if that's what Goop is doing, then that's what I need to be doing for my morning routine too. So
it didn't help lemon cells.
So So just funny little anecdote that tells you kind of what we're up against.
Right. No, thank you for that interjection. That's totally valid. And just circling back to this, most people, not surprisingly, had not personally tested their water or reviewed our CCRs, but assumed their water would be unclean. So, yeah. Moving on to trust and skepticism. As I mentioned, the general mood is pessimistic. Trust in government has been eroded. Government and politicians are viewed interchangeably. So more bad news there. Participants were frustrated by a perceived lack of progress or lack of success in dealing with big water related issues. But if you jump down to the fourth bullet point, they perceive desal and other large scale projects as too expensive and impractical. Specifically, many folks believe more rainwater should be captured. And interestingly, some people felt that in a state like California, water supply should not even be an issue. Like we should not even be talking about it. It should just be there, available, and it should just maybe magically appear. So I am going to skip over that one because I want to get to key components of trust, which I think is important. So transparency, people wanted agencies to share as much information as possible. They want to see demonstration projects, a demonstrated track record of success. They like innovative projects such as shade balls and reservoirs. They appreciated third-party validation from trusted nonprofits, for example, in addition to, water agencies saying, we're doing all this great stuff. And a factor of trust in government agencies is that profit is not a motive, and people that resonated with folks that they are working purely for the public interest. So I'm going to just touch on this briefly. Perceptions of Metropolitan, as I mentioned, it's low. Some like the concept of a big agency overseeing smaller ones. Some didn't, thought there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And many opinions were just neutral, not positive or negative. They didn't know much about Met. And so that kept the opinions sort of level. Moving on to attitudes about water issues. Water supply and drought were certainly top of mind for most participants. Most people did not think that we don't need to save water because it rained in 2023. Many participants said they had personally reduced their water usage, particularly outdoors. And a recurring perception, though, was that California's water supply issues stem from inefficient management, not lack of rain. Some interesting opinions about water quality. Their detailed knowledge is very limited. There are general thoughts that it may be an issue, but people aren't quite sure. Few read the CCR, the Consumer Confidence Report, although many indicated they would trust such a report. They're not reading it. And they kind of assess their own water based on a lot of factors that they find important, how it tastes, how it smells, the clarity, how it felt on their hair and skin. So some interesting water quality attitudes here. And then again, back to the bottled water. For many, it is a learned habit, not a specific complaint against tap water. Some did note that water quality concerns in other locations out of state or out of country push them to kind of err on the side of caution in not using their own tap water. But again, the consultant said that was far more pervasive 20 years ago, that attitude of why people use bottled water. And I think these quotes are somewhat interesting. If someone comes over, you can't serve a glass of tap water to company. It's not socially acceptable, according to some of these folks. And then advertising and companies, really pushing bottled water. Folks thought that was the time when people really started moving into drinking bottled water. And lastly, some conclusions and recommendations. As I've noted a couple times, skepticism and mistrust is pervasive. Perceptions of government have been soured by times when folks have not delivered on promises. This is metropolitan, but I think it's applicable to any water agency. It may benefit from effectively communicating success of its own efforts, particularly any new or novel approaches. People respond to that. And then communicating the mission-driven work, and I'm interpreting that to mean nonprofit motive work of Metropolitan or other agencies about supply and quality, may help with that communication. People want to believe that water agencies are not working for profit and instead are working for the public good. So that concludes the report on the research. I think there's some very interesting findings to ponder, and happy to try to answer questions or get answers for you.
thought these are all great concepts, particularly for those who might be going out amongst the electorate. That, you know, you're saying not to project it from this small group, but I actually find the concepts quite full of relevant information. And so that's what attracted me to, you know, thinking, wow, this is great stuff.
Right, probably goes beyond 64 people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate
Yeah,
you presenting it. Hello?
Yeah, hey, this is Raul. So I don't see this as a big surprise, and I don't see this directly necessarily tied to MEP, but also relevant to all water agencies. And again, this goes back to our messaging and what we've been working on spreading the word on what we're doing, you know, sharing that we've changed our strategic plan and we are working towards a new path. We're looking at local storage, we're looking at local projects and partnerships, and we're trying to make a real change. And people just don't know about that. And you know, some of this also relates back to metropolitan. It's the same thing. The people just are they don't know what they aren't being shared, that what's not being shared with them. So that's kind of what I got there. And you know, let's keep going out there talking to the people and letting them know what we're doing and what's coming down the pipe.
You know, one of the things that I found interesting too, now I don't know if I'm confusing an editorial or if there was something in this report that I saw earlier, but on the one hand, they said they trust governmental agencies because they don't have the profit motive. But then maybe it was an editorial that said, I think they should not be governmental, they should be investor-owned utilities because they're for profit. And if they're for profit, then people won't buy the product if they're overpricing. And you know, I think, well, wait a minute, we're talking about water here. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
I will note that I think there is also the, you know, public trust in government is not necessarily segmented in the way that that we're organized. There was a notice in Port Hueneme about a caller form popping up on a routine test, and so there was, you know, a letter that went out and just informing the public. And I think that may, you know, it obviously put some doubt in the Port Hueneme local public, but I think instances like that negatively affect everybody in the local industry, just because, you know, they think if it can happen over here, it could happen over there. So, you know, I think it is unfortunate, but I'm not terribly surprised by the lack of trust in government and politicians. So that's unfortunate, but hopefully with our new messaging and our public outreach and all that, we can kind of educate and really show the public how good quality our water is, and maybe we can incentivize Port Hueneme and Oxnard to buy more of it.
And you know, I want to piggyback on Director Roberts' comments. That was Director Roberts, right?
Yes.
That yeah, there was a you know, the recent LA Times, I think, talking about Coachella's Chrome 6 issue, and that went big over my family anyway, and so many of them up in Northern California, and so they were all worried about Chrome 6. So the transference occurs, whether it, you know, it's your water system or not. It goes across the state rather than where it is in particular that it happens. So my only comment to them was to read your water quality report. And so one comment from my nephew was that he didn't understand the water quality report. And another comment was that they're really, if it's not appearing on the water quality report, they don't realize that it was analyzed for, they didn't read that print. It was analyzed for and it was non-detect. So people don't seem to get that. And I'm not sure how to solve that problem.
What a great point, Scott, President Quady. I really like what you had to say there, and absolutely, I completely agree. You know, whenever I go speak to the public and I mention the water quality report, you know, much of the public doesn't really understand what's included there and what those results mean. You know, going into the future, what would actually be great is a simplified version of, okay, I don't understand what this is. Lay it out to me. What is it? What am I looking at?
A look at a glance.
Yeah.
You know, and another thought that came up during Charlotte's presentation is, you know, the distrust in, you know, an agency doing their own testing. I wonder if a third party, you know, verification test would help gain some trust, you know, to show that our tests are accurate and you know, double verified by a third party agency or third party testing company. Just something to bounce around.
Well, we get into that, I guess. Having been involved with laboratories, that laboratories have to answer to a third party anyway. They have to answer to a certifying accrediting agency. And in that accreditation, they are required to perform analysis on blind samples. They are required to do external checks on how their analysis is going. So that does occur. And it's just interesting, you know, people won't know that that occurs. So
yeah, maybe that could be something that could be included in the water quality report. You know, a certificate of their third party verifications.
Yeah, since they made us go to TNI, we might as well advertise it.
You know, it's funny to hear all this about the water quality report because it's something that's been there for so many years, and the fact that I think that at least back in my day, Department of Health Services, which is now State Water Quality Control Board, taking that on, but the drinking water services, right?
State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water.
Division of Drinking Water, and so those guys are constantly trying to figure out how to get things into common language. And so there's prescriptions. It's not the Calleguas staff or any laboratory that actually comes up with the language used. It is actually what the state tells us to use. And so I think it's kind of funny that we've gotten to a point where we're starting to hear so many people saying they don't understand what it is.
Yeah.
Well, maybe like Director Avila said, maybe like a quick glance cover sheet for, you know, because people are interested in the information, but maybe don't have the time to dedicate to really get into understanding the water quality report. You know, a cover sheet maybe from us or, you know, however we want to organize it would be a nice kind of, you know, you check it, you see all green levels on a slider bar and you say, okay, good, they're in the green.
Color coding, pass that on. Yeah, it's really a long history of trying to be as succinct, as brief as possible, and at the same time cover everything. So it's worth the comments. Thank you. Appreciate that. And on to the general counsel report.
The only comment I have is that you all received from the Better Late Than Never department, you all received the quarterly legal summary. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you. Board of Directors reports, ancillary duties. A report of Aqua Region 8, no report there. And Aqua JPIA, nothing's happened there. Association of Water Agencies of Ventura County represented.
No report since the last board meeting.
Fox Canyon?
There was a meeting last week, I believe, but I was not around to participate. And it was in the monthly report status.
Okay. Metropolitan Water District Director.
As you have my report in front of you, on May 6th, I attended the Heal the Bay fundraiser, met with the sponsor. May 27th to 28th, I attended MET's Executive Committee and Audit Subcommittee of the Executive Committee. May 30th, the Camp for Water Subcommittee on Long-Term Regional Planning Model. And on the 31st, I attended a WINS workshop in Orange County. And they, by the way, they kept saying, we really wish we had someone from Ventura County here. And I was like, I'm here. The third time I said, I'm here. And then they were like, oh, yay. Because they wanted to have representation from all 6 counties. And I was there as Met, so they didn't know that I was Calleguas. So that was nice to know. They were appreciative just being there.
LAFCO Commissioner?
Nothing to report. There won't be a meeting next month, so no report for a little bit.
And Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance, May 16th, there was what they call a champions meeting. And that's a meeting with reports on community grants and city initiatives regarding clean fuels and clean and green activities. Ventura County Special District Association.
The June 4th meeting was canceled, so no report.
So then let's go into the reimbursable meetings. Let's start with the overseas crew first. Director Roberts.
Sure. So on the 2nd, I virtually attended the AWA Board of Directors meeting. On the 6th through the 9th, the Aqua Conference in Sacramento. On the 13th, Metropolitan's One Water and Stewardship Committee. On the 14th, Metropolitan's Finance and Asset Management Committee. On the 15th, our own board meeting. And on the 28th, tour of Calleguas with Supervisor Matt Levere, which was, you know, it's not my first time doing a tour, but every time there's more information, and it was a beautiful day, and it was nice to hear kind of his questions and see some other sides of Calleguas that I hadn't seen yet. And then on the 29th, the BEC online training, which I aced, I'll just mention. And tonight's board meeting.
Thank you. Director Avila.
Yeah, since the last board meeting, I called into the Met Executive Committee meeting on the 29th. I called into and watched the Metropolitan receive $99 million for their pure water project from federal funding. And on the 30th, I watched Director McMillan come in for the save at the long-term planning and business subcommittee. They didn't have a quorum, and Director McMillan was able to save that meeting.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Speaking of,
Yes, on the 17th, I attended the grant ceremony at Nyland Acres, May 20th through the 22nd of CSDA's Legislative Days in Sacramento with Charlotte and Maya. On June the 4th, CSDA is running for office webinar. And today, the CSDA Special District Laws webinar and tonight's board meeting.
Tonight's board meeting. Okay. I also attended on May 17th, the Nyland Acres Water Reliability and Collaboration. And on the 23rd, the Purveyor meetings in Oxnard. And the 28th, I also attended with the visit by Supervisor Matt Levere. And tonight's board meeting. So upcoming meetings.
Yeah, if I could just highlight a couple of things on the upcoming meetings table. One is that Wednesday, June 19th, that's actually the date of the next board meeting. I will be presenting to the Ventura County Taxpayers Association here in this room. If you're interested in attending that, let Kara know, and we'll give them a head count of Calleguas attendees. Also worth noting is that we're considering canceling the July 3rd board meeting. Having spoken with staff, there isn't anything time critical expected, and that obviously falls very close to the July 4th holiday. So we'll confirm that at the next meeting, whether we'll be canceling that or whether we might need to hold it for some reason. The only other thing I want to highlight, this isn't so much an upcoming meetings thing, is that I will be on vacation starting tomorrow through Monday. I'll send the board an email after this, just officially. Ian will be acting in my absence, so I'm going to go collect my 50th state.
Very good. Happy trails. All right, any requests for future agenda items? Information items? No closed session?
No, sir.
And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Night. Thank you, Director Roberts and Avila. I hope you guys get some sleep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Christine.
Good night.